imagine stepping back in time with us to November 15th, 1922. Picture this. A night that clings to memory, thick with a really frigid, penetrating cold and this heavy, shrouding fog blanketing the rural Waldviertel region of Austria.
Yeah, the kind of night where the silence just feels heavy, almost oppressive.
Exactly, broken maybe only by the wind. And inside this, well, humble but prosperous farmhouse in the tiny village of Allentsgschwendt, a woman's awake, restless night. Maybe her mind's as clouded as the weather. She claims she has a throbbing toothache. Suddenly, she hears them noises from the farmyard.
Oh, rustling. And then this awful sound, the piercing squeal of pigs.
A sound you don't want to hear on a farm at night.
No. She rushes to her husband, shakes him awake. Get up. There are pig thieves in the yard. He's a wealthy farmer. Life's already thrown a lot at him, you know?
Yeah.
He quickly dresses, grabs a lantern, steps out into this just overwhelming darkness.
Pitch black, fog.
The air bites, the fog just swallows the lantern's glow, and then bang! Silence shattered. 3 sharp cracks of a revolver.
Oh, a gasp. A fall. A life just gone. Instantly. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not just looking back at history. We're really digging into the cold, hard ground of an almost century-old mystery. A true crime that didn't just shake a quiet Austrian village. It echoed through generations. The brutal murder of Franz Ilzeltz.
Yeah.
Our mission for you, our listener, is to join us as we sift through this fascinating, sometimes honestly frustrating mix of historical records. We've got these deeply personal family histories, the quiet, often painful stories passed down.
The kind that don't always make the official reports.
Right. And then juxtaposed with that, sensational newspaper clippings from the time, different perspectives, often conflicting. It paints a really complex picture. So together, we'll try to piece together these fragmented events, challenge those first assumptions, and uncover the layers of suspicion, the rumors that kept the story alive for decades, like a persistent ache in the community's memory.
And this case is particularly interesting because it shows you straight away how fast the official story can split from, well, the whispered truths in a community like that.
Definitely.
When emotions are high, personal stories, local gossip, it all gets tangled up with the official records. Trying to reconstruct what really happened, it becomes this huge challenge.
Yeah.
We're not just trying to list facts, what happened, but really get a feel for the social climate, the economic pressures, the individual psychologies that shaped how people saw things, what decisions they made, and ultimately steered the course of justice, or maybe injustice.
That's a great point.
It's a delicate balance, trying to piece together truth from so many fragmented viewpoints, some deliberate, some maybe just accidental.
Okay, so let's dive into part 1. A world in turmoil. The Ilzeltz family in post-WWI Waldviertel. To really get the gravity of this murder, the motivations swirling around it, we need to set the stage properly. The year is 1918. Europe, Austria specifically, just crawled out from the shadow of World War I. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, gone, collapsed.
A huge upheaval.
Huge. Leaving this fledgling republic grappling with the just profound economic, social, psychological turmoil. And in the rural Waldviertel region, where our story happens, the impact was visceral. This was a time of immense hardship.
Absolutely. Starvation was widespread, crushing shortages of everything, the collective trauma of the war, and just this heavy cloud of uncertainty hanging over everyone.
The men who came back, often broken physically, mentally, and those who didn't, left these gaping holes in families, communities. But amidst all that desolation, there was also this fragile, almost desperate hope for better times, a yearning for stability, rebuilding lives.
Trying to find some normalcy again.
Exactly, and it's against this really stark backdrop, scarcity and fragile hope, that the Ilzeltz farm in Allentsgschwendt stood. From the outside, probably looked like a beacon of stability, right? Seemingly idyllic rural setting. But underneath, powerful, maybe dangerous currents were starting to swirl. Now, our central figure, the victim, Franz Ilzeltz, born 1867, he wasn't just any farmer, he was a really prominent figure, known as the wealthiest farmer in the whole area.
And that meant something back then, especially post-war, to be the richest farmer in the Waldviertel.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It meant extensive land, probably a bigger, more modern farmstead, more livestock, resources to hire farmhands, all markers of considerable influence, power, security, when most people were just struggling to survive.
Right. But despite that material success, his personal life had already seen real tragedy.
Absolutely. His first wife, Maria Reisinger, born 1881, died tragically young in 1918, the same year the war ended.
Awful timing.
Leaving France with 4 very young children, 3 daughters, Julianne, born 1906, Anna in 1908, and Maria in 1911. They called it a dry matter house, kind of a charming, if maybe wistful term for a three-girl house.
Like something out of a storybook, but with a sad undercurrent.
And then there was Gustav, a much younger son, just a toddler at the time.
And the death of Marita Reisiger in 1918.
Mm-hmm.
It's particularly illuminating when you think about the harsh medical realities back then, especially in rural Austria.
How did she die exactly?
She died during childbirth.
So,
From what was described as puerperal fever, or Leichenvergiftung, basically, a severe infection. This happened after the baby died inside her due to a transverse lie.
Oh, terrible. So the baby was positioned sideways.
Exactly, making natural birth almost impossible, incredibly dangerous for both mother and child. And it makes you wonder, right, how much of this was just accepted as fate and how much was really a silent tragedy of just profoundly inadequate medical care.
Yeah.
In remote places like the Waldviertel, home births weren't really a choice. They were a necessity. Access to even basic medical equipment, severely limited. And the midwives, they called them Storchentanten, stork ants.
Storchentanten, I like that.
Yeah, affectionate term. But they were often overworked, totally overwhelmed by severe complications like this. A C-section, something routine today that might have saved Maria. Just not an option there.
Oh.
The nearest hospital in Krems was, 30 kilometers away?
Yeah.
That's hours by ox cart on rough roads for someone critically ill. That journey itself could be a death sentence. It just highlights the immense vulnerability of life, especially for women back then.
It paints an absolutely stark picture, doesn't it? That thin line between life and death, tied so closely to where you lived, your circumstances.
Absolutely.
And if that wasn't enough of a burden emotionally, practically, the societal attitudes towards women at the time, they add another even grimmer layer. Our sources point out this really shocking proverb, apparently disturbingly common back then. The death of a woman doesn't bother the farmer, but the death of a horse scares him.
Ugh.
Just hearing that today sends a shiver down your spine. Tells you so much about the social fabric.
And this really highlights a critical point about how women were valued or maybe devalued in that specific socioeconomic context. This proverb, maybe not everyone said it out loud, but it reflected this deeply ingrained, almost casual misogyny. It underscored women's primary role as, well, essential laborers and childbearers.
Right, their value is practical.
Exactly. Pragmatically tied to their economic contribution. Could they work the fields, manage the house, produce children, especially sons, to carry on the name and labor? When a horse died, that was a direct, immediate, significant financial hit. Impacted the farm's productivity.
Okay, I see the grim logic.
The death of a woman, while maybe emotionally devastating for the family, could, from a purely cold economic view, often be replaced. As we're about to see with Franz Wilzelt, this wasn't just a saying. It affected legal rights, economic realities. Women's property rights were often weak, their labor essential but undervalued, their social mobility just severely limited.
So imagine being those young girls, Julianne, Anna, Maria.
Exactly. Growing up hearing things like that, implicitly valuing their lives less than livestock, especially after losing their own mother in childbirth. It must have made it incredibly hard to develop any sense of self-worth or to even imagine a life beyond the farm's demands. It really shows the impossible binds women were in, caught between rigid expectations and maybe their own personal desires.
That's a crucial distinction. The proverb is shocking, but it reflected a harsh economic reality, not just cruelty.
Right.
And despite the brutal pragmatism of that saying, Franz Ilzelt was in a dire situation. A large farm, 4 young kids. Gustav was only 3 in 1918. He absolutely needed a wife.
It wasn't optional.
No, the demands of a big farm back then, childcare, cooking, harvesting animals, it was immense. Without a wife to manage the household, contribute labor, the whole operation, the kids' well-being, it was all jeopardized. It was an economic and social imperative. Find a wife, quickly. Okay, part 2. The second Mrs. Ulzelt in a brewing storm. So, Franz needed a wife urgently, not about romance, about necessity, and a new figure enters the story, someone whose arrival would dramatically change everything for the Ulzelt household. Her name was Maria Schulmeister, born 1895,
Okay.
described as blood young and very beautiful. But what really jumps out, the age gap. A full 29 years younger than Franz.
Wow, 29 years.
Yeah. When they married, he was 51, established, wealthy. She was just 23, barely out of her teens. And Maria wasn't a stranger to the farm. She'd worked there before as a maid.
Ah, so she knew the place, knew Franz.
Knew the household, the demanding rhythms, yes.
And this is where the plot really thickens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because this marriage, by all accounts, was not about love or affection. It was cold calculation.
Sounds like it.
Maria's parents, probably seeing this amazing opportunity to secure their daughter's future, they strongly pushed for it, basically forced her hand.
Marrying the richest farmer around.
Exactly. In that impoverished post-war landscape, irresistible security and status. But for Maria, it meant this immediate, dramatic upheaval. She's thrust into this incredibly demanding, often thankless role. Not just a farmer's wife, but stepmother to 4 kids still grieving their own mother.
That's a tough position for anyone, let alone someone so young.
And then, add to that huge burden, she quickly has her own child, Leopoldine, born November 11th, 1920. It paints this vivid picture. A young woman, maybe naive, definitely with limited choices, suddenly trapped. Security, yes, but likely very little personal happiness. She must have felt profoundly alone, isolated by her new duties, the age gap.
And it seems those feelings, that isolation, discontent, it manifested pretty quickly and dramatically. Maria Unsolved née Schulmeister soon sought comfort elsewhere. She started an affair with Josef Fuchs, born 1898.
The farmhand.
A young farmhand, yes. And crucially, a childhood friend of Maria's from Montyholtz, just 3 kilometers away.
So a history there.
Seems like it. Sources suggest maybe a mix of convenience and, rekindled affection. That saying, old love never rusts, feels kind of apt here.
Predictable outcome, though. Friends found out.
Predictably, yes. Franz Unsolved discovered the affair. A man like him, wouldn't tolerate that. He acted fast, fired Josef Fuchs.
But that didn't end it, did it?
Nope. As often happens, dismissal didn't stop them. In fact, the affair became even more intense, maybe fueled by the secrecy, the danger, and Maria's growing resentment towards Franz. She started complaining to neighbor, saying Franz treated her poorly.
Interesting. Laying groundwork, perhaps?
Could be. Subtly looking for sympathy, maybe justification.
And putting this in context, Maria's complaints, the deepening affair, it hints at maybe a growing desperation and potentially a calculated plan way beyond just a romantic fling, which brings us to a really critical figure, Josef Fuchs's mother, Anna Fuchs.
Right, tell us about her. The sources paint quite a picture.
They do. Described as a man-wife, a man-woman, a term back then often implying a strong, maybe aggressive woman who didn't fit the usual mold. Newspaper reports just flat out called her a very evil woman.
Wow. Sounds formidable.
You can almost picture her, right? A village matriarch whose words carried weight, especially with a son hoping to climb the social ladder. And she reportedly got directly involved. Explicitly told her son, Joseph and Maria, to get rid of the old Unsolved.
Get rid of him, just like that.
Or, chillingly, she said she'd poison him herself. Now, was this just angry talk, frustration, wanting her son to do better? Or was it the deliberate seed of a crime, a calculated strategy to remove Franz?
It's hard to say for sure, but the intent seems clear.
Her words definitely suggest this deep, pre-existing animosity, a cold, strategic desire to see Franz gone. Whether she was the master manipulator or just fanning the flames, her influence seems undeniable, injecting this lethal intent into the affair.
And the benefit they were all looking at, it was substantial, tangible, growing every day, actually. Yeah. At the time of the murder, the Unsolved farm was busy fattening a lot of pigs, specifically for the Christmas sales.
The money angle.
Exactly. This detail is crucial. It wasn't just about feeding the family. Selling pigs was a much quicker way to get substantial cash for farmers than, say, cattle, or rapid influx of money.
Right.
This really underscores Franz Unsoldt's wealth. And crucially, highlights a very potent financial motive that would have been blindingly obvious to those around him, especially Josef Fuchs and his family, who didn't have much.
That promise of wealth, suddenly seeming within reach, must have been a powerful accelerant to whatever desperate plan was forming.
Definitely. Okay, let's move to the night itself. Part 3, the fateful night, November 15th, 1922. Let's try to reconstruct that night. November 15th, 1922. The sources paint this incredibly evocative, foreboding picture. Miserable weather, that phrase alone says so much.
You can feel the chill.
We're talking icy cold, gray, windy, and foggy. Just a harsh, unforgiving November day in the Waldviertel, the kind of night where sounds are muffled, you can barely see a thing. Fear can really take hold easily. Maria Olza later claimed she'd been suffering severe toothaches all day, all night, couldn't sleep from the pain. Now, whether that was real or just part of her story, it became a critical detail, potentially explaining her actions, her state.
Right, the toothache excuse.
Sometime after midnight, deep in the morning hours, Maria claimed she heard suspicious noises from the yard, saw a flickering light, and then, more disturbingly, that unmistakable screaming of pigs.
Which means trouble. On a farm, that's an alarm bell.
Absolutely. She quickly woke Franz, urgently. Hey, get up, there are pig thieves in the yard. Franz already burdened, right? His first wife's death, His second wife's affair, now thieves. He sprang out of bed, probably a mix of anger, exhaustion,
You can imagine.
dressed quickly, gruffly told Maria, "Make light." She lit a stable lantern, feeble glow barely cutting the fog, and together they stepped out into the biting cold, the inky blackness.
Okay, so let's break this down. This is the critical moment. They go towards the stables, Maria leading with the lantern. She pushes open the heavy gate to the pigsties, and then this sudden, powerful gust of wind, almost like stage direction in a play.
Right. Extinguishes the lantern, plunging them into absolute total darkness.
Utter blackness. Maria then said she went back inside to relight it. It was during that brief interval, while she was supposedly gone, Franz alone in the pitch dark, that 3 revolver shots just ripped through the silence, very close by.
3 shots, though some reports differed.
Yeah, interestingly, some contemporary newspaper reports mentioned 2 shots. Another specified a pocket firearm. So hints of early confusion about the weapon, the number of shots. But the outcome was the same. Franz Unsolved collapsed instantly, gasping heavily, fatally wounded in the head, died right there.
And the shooter
Vanished. Under cover of the fog, the darkness, melted into the bushes, leaving behind just sudden, brutal death.
The timing, the darkness, the extinguished lantern.
You can't help but wonder, can you? How incredibly convenient all those elements were for whoever pulled the trigger. It feels suspicious. Almost too perfect for a random act of thievery gone wrong.
Definitely raises questions. And Maria's actions immediately after the murder. Also highly scrutinized. Lots of speculation there.
What did she do?
She quickly went back inside, woke Franz's children, told them pig thieves shot their father, then sent them, terrified, to the neighbors for help.
Oh, the poor children.
When the distraught neighbors finally arrived, drawn by the kids' cries, the awful news, Maria was reportedly back in bed, still citing her toothache.
Back in bed,
Yeah.
while her husband lay dead outside.
Exactly. This detail became a huge point of contention. Some thought, okay, maybe a nervous breakdown, delayed shock, a natural reaction to trauma.
Plausible, I suppose.
Others, though, whispered about a chilling, almost calculated calm, an act to deflect suspicion.
It's hard to know. But you just ache for those kids. Gustav, only 6. His 3 older sisters, they already lost their mother, dealt with a difficult stepmother. Now their father murdered violently, suddenly.
Unimaginable trauma, compounded.
The sources suggest it profoundly affected them for the rest of their lives. Left this deep, unhealed wound, shaped their futures entirely.
Okay, so the investigation begins. Part 4. The initial investigation and misdirection. In that chaotic, grief-stricken aftermath, Maria Unsolved didn't waste any time. With a speed that, well, later raised eyebrows, she immediately pointed the finger. Told the gendarmerie, the rural police back then, that the Prohaska brothers were the killers.
The Prohaskas, who were they?
Notorious local figures, known vagrants, petty thieves, had a reputation for stealing anything not nailed down, chickens, pigs, tools.
Usual suspects.
Exactly. Feared, hated by villagers, sometimes associated with violence, general mischief. So for the authorities, it was a seemingly easy, credible story to grab onto.
Yeah, it's understandable why suspicion would fall on known troublemakers like them. Especially in a small, isolated community. It's a classic deflection tactic, right? Easy to believe if someone wants to draw attention away from themselves.
Makes sense.
And policing back then, especially in rural areas post-war, was often basic. Prejudices against marginalized figures were common. So the gendarmerie acted fast, arrested the Prohaska brothers, took them to Krems.
But they didn't hold them long.
No, their detention was short. They produced what was considered a credible alibi and were released. Innocence established, at least legally.
Okay.
But what's interesting, showing the early confusion, is a discrepancy in some newspaper accounts from the time. One article mentions the arrest of a single Andreas Prohaska, described as a Czech citizen, a lazy auxiliary worker, whose description matched one initial suspect.
So the details were murky even then.
Exactly. Highlights how fast information could get distorted, generalized, selectively reported in the local press, complicating the task of finding the truth amidst that initial chaos. It really shows the difficulty authorities had separating facts from rumor, especially when an easy scapegoat pops up.
And while the investigation was briefly focused on the Prohaskas, what happened to the Unsolved children, the family was shattered.
Yeah, they faced an incredibly harsh, immediate reality, no social safety net like we have today.
So what did happen?
The 3 older daughters, Julianne, Anna, Maria, were quickly sent away to work as maids on other farms.
Maids. Just like that.
It's like that. And young Gustav, only 6, now fully orphaned, was taken in by his father's sister. It was this brutal, immediate dispersal of the family, tearing the kids away from what little remained of their home, each other, leaving them vulnerable, alone, in a world that suddenly felt terrifyingly hostile.
Awful.
The sheer swiftness, the harshness of it, it reflects the lack of social welfare then. The complete breakdown of the family unit after such a violent tragedy. These kids, already traumatized by loss after loss, were basically orphaned and thrust into indentured labor, or separated. A stark testament to how unforgiving life was in post-war rural Austria.
It underscores the wider impact, doesn't it? Far beyond just the victim.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just a statistic, it's a lifetime of psychological wounds, a stolen childhood, forced independence for kids left to fend for themselves. And that separation probably fragmented any shared memory they might have had about their father or that night, making it even harder to reconcile their trauma later.
Okay, part 5. A village's suspicion. The quick remarriage and rumors. The village of Allentsgschwendt, still reeling from Franz Unsold's murder, soon had another, even more immediate reason for, well, outrage and deep suspicion. Maria Unsold's actions in the months after Franz's death were incredibly swift and provocatively public.
How so?
Immediately after the murder of her husband, barely pausing for the usual mourning period, she brought her lover, Josef Fuchs, into the Unsolved farm.
Wow, okay. That's fast.
And then, with what locals considered astonishing speed, just half a year later, Maria and Josef were married.
Half a year after a husband was murdered on their property.
Exactly.
That is brazen. And it was a profound affront to the community's norms, their expectations. The village population, understandably, was very indignant because a full year of mourning, that would have been considered not just appropriate, but absolutely customary, religiously expected even.
So this was a huge breach.
Huge. Not just bad etiquette. Perceived as blatant disrespect for Franz, a calculated disregard for the social order. Publicly flaunting their relationship right after the tragedy. And Josef Fuchs, remember, the farmhand. Suddenly, almost overnight, he becomes the proud farmer of this substantial Unsolved estate.
Quite the step up.
That rapid, almost miraculous rise in status and wealth for the Fuchs family. It must have fueled intense resentment, suspicion among locals who knew Josef when he had nothing. Transferring such a valuable property, no grieving period, no legal challenge. It was just too much to ignore.
And it wasn't just Maria and Josef moving in.
No, who else?
Josef Fuchs's mother, Anna Fuchs, the one who reportedly encouraged the murder, and his brother, Franz Fuchs, also relocated to the former Unsolved farm.
The whole family basically took over.
Pretty much. Consolidating their hold on this newly acquired estate only deepened the local unease, the outrage. Anna Fuchs, by the way, died just 2 years later, 1924. Took her secrets with her.
So, despite the official story, pig thieves, the Prohaskas quickly cleared. The people of Allentsgschwendt kept whispering. There was this insistent feeling that something was rotten, something not right.
The official explanation just didn't sit well.
No. It felt too convenient, swept under the rug too quickly. Rumors persistently focused on the widow herself, or Josef Fuchs, or his brother Franz.
Gossip can be tricky, though.
Absolutely. In a close-knit place like that, everyone knows everyone's business. It was hard to separate malicious gossip, maybe fueled by envy, from genuine events. But the sheer persistence, the consistency of these rumors, focusing on the same people, the same improprieties, it strongly suggested a deep suspicion beyond just idle chatter.
The speed of the remarriage, the sudden wealth taking over the farm.
It was too convenient, too public, too morally offensive for the community to just forget. That collective memory, the shared unease, it became this unwritten history. A slow-burning fuse, really, just waiting to be lit.
And eventually, it was. Part 6. The Truth Unravels. 6 years later. Those whispers, those suspicions simmering for so long. They finally found their moment. 6 long years after the murder. December 1928. A new, seemingly unrelated conflict brought the whole cold case roaring back.
6 years is a long time for a secret to hold in a small village.
It is. Josef Fuchs, now the established proud farmer, got into a heated dispute with a tenant farmer over just an acre of land he wanted back to farm himself.
Land disputes. Always messy.
This one escalated dramatically. The argument, probably fueled by years of resentment, the tensions of land ownership, the enraged tenant maybe feeling wronged about the land, maybe channeling years of local indignation, just exploded. Publicly. In the village tavern for everyone to hear.
Oh boy, what did he say?
His words were a direct, stinging accusation.
You miserable, greedy scum, you also killed old Unsolved.
Wow, he went there.
He didn't stop, his voice probably ringing through the place. The Fuchs people butchered old Unsolved, he was in their way, now they're spreading out on the Unsolved farm and acting important, these miserable murderers. And that brings up a critical point, doesn't it? How long do secrets really stay buried in a close-knit community? This outburst wasn't just an argument over land. It was the catalyst. It brought years of private suspicion crashing into the public domain, made it impossible for authorities to ignore anymore.
The dam finally broke.
It speaks to the power of local memory, the weight of perceived injustice. Even after 6 years, that raw sense of wrong was potent enough to ignite this. It shows you, in a village, people see things, they remember. The injustice festered, and this tenant farmer, pushed to his limit, basically became the voice of the community's unspoken truth. His words may be crude, emotional, but they were the trigger. Justice finally had a chance.
And this very public, very loud accusation, it finally spurred the gendarmerie into decisive action. The long-standing rumors, now undeniable, they reached the police with new urgency.
So they reopened the case.
Yes. 2 dedicated investigation teams were promptly sent from Krems to Allentsgschwendt, signaling a serious, renewed intent to crack this cold case. And shortly thereafter, those long-held village suspicions became actual arrests. 3 people taken into custody: Maria Fuchs, her husband Josef Fuchs, and Josef's brother, Franz Fuchs.
The 3 main suspects from the rumors.
Exactly. And the local newspaper, reflecting the sensation, the public outrage, screamed a headline that left nothing to the imagination.
Der Weibsteufel von Allentsgschwendt.
The she-devil of Allentsgschwendt.
Yeah, not just sensational, deeply misogynistic, right?
Okay.
It captured the public perception of Maria, this diabolical figure who defied all norms. Her alleged role, the scandalous remarriage.
So it really demonized her, reinforced that narrative.
Yeah.
Women who transgress aren't just criminals or figures of evil. A heavy judgment. Okay, part 7. Confessions, contradictions, and a vanishing truth. So, the arrests are made. The pressure on them must have been immense. Initial investigations were tough, authorities trying to break through 6 years of denial. The sources say there was much evidence pointing to them, but initially, they denied everything, maintained their innocence.
Sticking to their story.
Until Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1928, a dramatic turning point. The examining magistrate from the Krems court, the lead investigative judge, perhaps using the solemnity of the holiday, urged them to lighten their conscience before Christmas.
Playing on their emotions, maybe their guilt.
Seems like it worked. In that moment, Maria Fuchs, the she-devil of the headlines, made a comprehensive confession.
Wow, she broke first.
She did. And faced with her admission, Josef Fuchs and his brother Franz, their defenses crumbled. They also confessed, unreservedly. A stunning reversal after 6 years of silence, denial, this carefully built facade.
It's fascinating, the psychology of confession. Especially under those circumstances, Christmas Eve,
Right.
Immense pressure, internal guilt, external pressure from authorities. It can make people break. But what's also interesting, adds some ambiguity, are the contradictions within the confessions. An earlier report from December 15th, just days before Christmas Eve, says Maria initially made a dubious confession.
Dubious how?
In that version, she claimed her deceased godmother and, crucially, her mother-in-law, Anna Fuchs, Joseph's mother, dead 4 years by then, had actually shot Franz Unsolved, with Maria's full knowledge and consent, but Anna pulled the trigger.
That's an extraordinary claim. Blaming a dead woman
Right.
feels incredibly convenient.
Absolutely. Highly suspect. It makes you ask, could a 70-year-old woman, Anna Fuchs, likely frail, really have made such an accurate shot in the dark? It seems like a pretty transparent, convenient way to shift the ultimate blame onto someone who couldn't defend herself.
Especially since Anna was seen as the instigator anyway.
Exactly, the evil woman who maybe put the idea in their heads. So that initial confession feels like Maria trying to minimize her direct role while still implicating the family. But the later, comprehensive confession by all 3 on Christmas Eve, that one explicitly stated Josef Fuchs was the shooter.
Okay, so the final story was Joseph pulled the trigger.
That later unified confession, all 3 accounts pointing to Joseph, it feels more cohesive, perhaps closer to the actual truth, suggesting the dubious one was a desperate, failed attempt to deflect.
So let's piece together the murder plot as it came out in those final confessions. Maria and Joseph, childhood lovers, couldn't marry due to poverty.
Which led her to marry Franz.
Right, for security, not love. But the affair continued, intensified by her unhappiness, and it was during this renewed affair that the plan formed. Maria allegedly said, as long as he's here, the property isn't mine, offered to free herself from the old farmer.
Chillingly direct.
They agreed. Unsolved would be shot. On November 15th, the Fuchs family, Joseph, brother Franz, mother Anna, would act like burglars hiding in the garden bushes.
Setting the stage.
Maria's role was crucial. Wake Franz claimed she heard noises, chickens, pigs, sources, very slightly, but the goal was the same. Lure outside, Send him to the stable with just a stick, knowing the farmhands were asleep.
Walking him into a trap.
Exactly. As Unsolved unsuspectingly entered the stable, Joseph, hidden in the bushes, used a loaded military rifle.
A rifle, not a revolver or pocket gun.
The final confession specified a rifle, suggested more deliberate planning, a more powerful weapon maybe. Shot him in the head, died instantly, just as planned. The path was then free for the lovers to claim his property, his life.
A meticulously planned, cold-blooded act, driven by greed and desperation.
But the legal proceedings that followed, unfortunately, they get murky too. Another layer to this puzzle.
What happened in court?
First trial was in the regional court in Krems, but then the Fuchs couple, likely realizing how serious this was, hired a high-profile lawyer from Vienna.
Bringing in the big guns.
Which led to a second trial, this time in Vienna. Now, allegedly, and this is a key word, the Fuchs couple was acquitted.
Acquitted? After confessing? How?
That's the mystery. But here's the twist. The legal fees. Hiring that expensive lawyer, 2 trials. It was enormous. Financially crippling. They were forced to sell the Unsolved farm, the very thing they killed for.
Wow. Poetic injustice, almost.
The farm was bought by the Strasser family, ending the Fuchs' brief, ill-gotten time as wealthy landowners.
So they got away with murder but lost the prize.
Allegedly got away with it, because here, my friends, is where the historical record just hits a wall. A frustrating dead end for anyone seeking the full truth. Tragically, most of the lower Austrian court records from those key years, 1929 to 1932, simply disappeared.
Disappeared how?
Where they went, as our sources put it, the gods know.
And this is just a devastating loss for understanding the case. Without those court documents, the transcripts, the lawyers' arguments, the judge's reasoning, appeals, the final judgments, the full, official truth of the legal outcome irrevocably lost.
Gone forever.
It's not a minor detail. It's a gaping hole in this story. And with everyone involved long dead, the entire undisputed truth, we can't find it today. We're left with confessions, sensational news reports, family stories, but the definitive legal resolution, how they escaped conviction despite confessing, elusive, swallowed by time, missing paperwork.
A profound sense of incompleteness. A case where the final chapter, justice or lack thereof, is just missing.
A testament to how fragile historical records can be.
Indeed. And as for what actually happened to Maria and Joseph Fuchs after they supposedly walked free from Vienna, their story mostly fades into obscurity, a quiet, almost anticlimactic end after such a violent start.
Where did they go?
We know they later leased a guest house in Vienna, trying maybe to build a new life, far from the whispers of Allentsgschwendt. But beyond that, their lives after the murder remain largely untold, vanish into the historical mists, leaving us wondering what kind of lives they led, haunted, or did they just move on? So let's wrap this up. Outro. What an extraordinary, unsettling journey into history's shadows we've taken. We traced the threads of this crime from that cold, foggy night in 1922. From desperation, illicit love, to a shocking act of violence, we navigated misdirections, village whispers, eventual confessions, and finally, this frustrating disappearance of records.
Yeah.
The conflicting stories, the raw human emotion, love, betrayal, cold calculation for wealth, it all paints this vivid yet incomplete picture. We're left, as so often happens with history, with a truth that's just stubbornly out of reach. A puzzle with crucial pieces missing forever.
And placing this in a wider context, it really reminds us that history isn't always neat and tidy, all wrapped up with answers. Sometimes the most compelling stories, especially in true crime, are the ones where we end up with more questions than answers.
That's certainly true here.
The Allentsgschwendt murder of Franz Unsolved is a stark example of the limits of historical investigation when key evidence vanishes. We have the motives, the confessed actions, the societal reaction, the chilling human drama, but the full, legal, undisputed truth of the final outcome, tragically lost. It forces us to face that some historical wounds, some injustices might never get full closure.
This deep dive, like so many true crime stories echoing through time, leaves us thinking about the nature of justice itself, the dark complexities of human motive, and that enduring capacity we have for both desperation and deception. So what do you, our listener, think truly happened that fateful night in Allentsgschwendt? And can we ever really achieve justice or even a complete understanding when the full truth is lost to time? It's a question that definitely lingers, long after the last whisper of the past has faded away.